It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone. Brouhaha time here in Waynesboro, Mississippi at WABO. Dale McKee and me, Marshall Wood, for another round of the Brouhaha. How's my partner in crime doing today?
Doing good, Marshall. How you been doing? It's hot, isn't it?
It's a little warm.
What caused all this hotness?
I don't know.
Al Gore said it was coming.
Is that
Remember that?
Yeah, I guess he was right.
He was right, wasn't he? Still listen to that old boy.
Alger.
Where's he at now?
I don't know. He's pretty quiet.
Yeah, the only thing I know about him, he was Tommy Lee Jones's roommate at Harvard.
Really? You know some stuff, don't you? How do you know all that
Well,
stuff?
I like Tommy Lee Jones as an actor, and I was reading about him one day. And
Tommy Lee went to Harvard?
yeah, he was from Texas.
Captain
Played
Cole?
football.
Captain Cole?
Yeah, he played in what they call the greatest college game ever be played.
Tell us about it.
Well, I don't know much about it except Harvard and Yale tied 29-29. But one of them had a great comeback, like, you know, you've heard of those comebacks like the last 3 or 4 minutes of game. You know, one of them just came from way back.
Yeah.
But listen, I'll get the information shared with our loyal fans next.
Now, okay, so let's get this on record. I want everybody to understand. Next week, you're going to come to us with the Tommy Lee
The
Jones,
greatest college
the greatest game in history.
But now Tommy Lee he played offensive guard in the game.
Yeah.
So, you know, but
Is this the guy that played?
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like him anymore.
Well, he played in all those what was it, FBI shows, wasn't it, where he was chasing criminals all over the country and all that kind of stuff.
Huh.
Yeah, anyway.
He was in Men in Black.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of movies.
He's been in a lot of No Country for Old Men. You ever seen that one?
Mm-hmm.
I need to get me one of those things that guy had.
Yeah.
Hit those people between the eyes.
Yeah. You know, I think that game was played in about 68 or 69. Something 1968 or 9.
Tommy Lee Jones, Harvard. Mm-hmm. I guess he studied acting up there.
I guess he did.
He sure made a good one, didn't he?
Or he could have done
He's been
economics because he knew he was going to be rich one day.
I'll tell you, I like him. I've enjoyed a lot of his movies. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And the role he played in Lonesome Dove, Captain Cole, I mean, can't stand rude behavior. The man won't tolerate it. I love that line. Man, Dale, you're always just a fountain, a veritable fountain of information.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got anything? I mean, that just came out of left field. There's a sport term coming out of left field. You came in like a hurricane, man, with that bit of information. I wasn't expecting it, wasn't prepared for it. And wow, Tommy Lee Jones, Harvard. Well, you got anything else like that for our listeners? I mean, man, come on with it. You got something else. I know you holding out something.
I did read, and it'll be published one day here shortly.
Is this a scoop we're getting?
Yeah, I think it's a scoop because people might have forgot this from 50 years ago. 50 years ago.
Oh,
up
man.
at Jaguar Field in Wayne Academy. Kenny Odom played linebacker, 5'8", 150 pounds. Intercepted a pass, returned it 48 yards for a touchdown.
Oh, I wish you hadn't told me that.
Why?
Man, now he's going to tell me. Hey, K-Dog, way to go. I didn't know that.
Well, it's going to be in ink here shortly.
Man.
Yeah.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
You got the math right on that?
Yeah.
Was Wayne Academy here 50 years ago?
1974 Wayne Academy.
Wow.
One of the first years that they, I think they've been playing for 2 or 3 years by then, you know. So, anyway, I just brought that up because, you know, put a little Wayne County history, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's, but But you ought to
Congratulations, K-Dog, if you're listening out there, man. You've been holding out on me, and that was a great play you made, brother.
I'm going to put in I'm changing the words just a little bit. Said he ran for a score. I'm thinking about putting sped for a score.
You sped for a score?
Yeah, S-P-E-D. Sped for a score.
He didn't lope?
No.
Or linger? He sped?
No. What's the fastest animal on Earth?
On Earth?
The cheetah.
On land, I'm guessing the cheetah. Yeah. He was cheetah-like.
Yeah, he was cheetah-like the way he was running.
We may change the dog instead of K-Dog to cheetah.
Yeah.
Cheetah dog.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, that's about the best opening we've ever had. We got K-Dog on there running the touchdown.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, let's do. On that happy note, we're going to celebrate and rejoice in K-Dog's successor on the gridiron. Man.
You don't think there's another Kenny Odom in Waynesboro, do you?
Tell me it ain't so.
No, it can't be.
No. Oh, no. We're going with our Kenny.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Well, let me tell you. I'm not going to tell you anything. You can tell everybody. Who we got as our guest tonight?
We got Ben Smith. He is very diverse in his employment. He is presently the assistant athletic director at William Carey University. He's also the assistant baseball coach there, longtime baseball coach.
Boy, they know how to do that baseball over there.
He is originally from Laurel.
Okay.
He probably graduated high school the early 2000s.
Young guy.
Yeah.
By our standards.
Yeah. He's probably in his late 30s. He also is going to tell us about hunting and fishing because he's got a blog and he's got a podcast and he has contests. I know one time he had a USM William Carey baseball deer hunting contest to see who could, bring in the most deer or ever what it was they were competing for. So anyway, he's going to be our guest today, and we haven't had really a hunting and fishing guy. We did have Paul Elias one time fishing, the Bassmasters champion back in 1982 maybe, so somewhere like that. He's from Laurel, and he just went into the Sports Hall of Fame in Mississippi here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm excited to have a different subject to talk about.
Well, let's get it on. Let's take a break to hear from our sponsor, and then Dale and I'll be back with tonight's guest, Ben Smith, right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Ben. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm great. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, we were looking forward to it. Is it, let's just get some things out of the way. Is it hot where you are in Hattiesburg?
It is.
Okay.
I'm right down the road from you guys, so you know well. Fortunately, though, the humidity's not as bad today. So when you walk outside and you stay out there more than 5 minutes, you don't necessarily feel like you've already been swimming today.
Yeah, and under the shades, it seems like there's a cool breeze, and under some of the trees,
It's tolerable.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, well, it's better than nothing, I promise you. Well, Ben, tell us what everybody knows. We've introduced you as assistant athletic director and assistant baseball coach. But tell us about your hunting and fishing, the love for it, and what you do on the side with.
Okay. Well, obviously, through 16. Well, I guess I'm going into my 17th year coaching at William Carey. The assistant athletic director role that's a new one for me. That came about in April. But my real passion has always been the outdoors. Now, I hope Dr. Burnett doesn't hear this and may not pay me anymore if he hears this radio broadcast. But ever since I was a little kid, I always enjoyed hunting and fishing and those types of things. Now, I did more fishing as a kid than I did hunting. My dad didn't really hunt, so if I wanted to go hunting, I had to go with a couple of uncles. But I always grew up enjoying that. And when COVID hit in 2020, it shut our baseball season down at the beginning of March. And for the first time in my life, I had a spring that I didn't know what to do. Usually that time we're 90 miles an hour with baseball. So I started doing a lot of fishing. I took my kids fishing a lot. We had a deer camp at that time around Vicksburg, and we'd go up to the camp and stay and fish and ride four-wheelers and things like that. And my dad had always told me that when I was taking some of these hunting and fishing trips through the years that I should write about them. And so finally, when COVID hit, I decided, well, I'm gonna write some of this stuff down. Now, my wife, she's a lot smarter than I am, and she knows me better than I know myself. She knew that if I just wrote it down on a notepad somewhere, that within 2 weeks I'd lose it. So she set up a blog site for me to type it. She said, this way it'll be there. So I started doing a little blogging about hunting and fishing trips, and that caught the attention of some folks around here, and it turned into an outdoor column that started with the Pine Belt News. Andrew Abity was the sports editor, so he called me, and when he called me, I thought, okay, well, this will be a good little side gig. And I said, Andrew, you want me to write one, once a month, once every 2 months? And he came back and he said, no. He said, we want a column every week.
Ooh.
Now, that was a little overwhelming to begin with, but the good thing is it gave me an excuse to go hunting and fishing more. So that's how I've sold it to my wife all these years since then. Is look, I got to go hunting and fishing so I can have something to write about.
Boy.
And that kind of grew, and it was. Like I said, started out in Pine Belt News, and then the Smith County Reformer, when it was in circulation, it picked it up, and there was a paper in Alabama that picked it up for a short while, and then I guess about a year ago I started writing for the Magnolia Tribune, and I think they distributed it out to several newspapers across the state. So it's been a true blessing to be able to do that, and something I've really grown to enjoy that I never would have thought I would have done. And then there was a podcast that was born out of that. I had some friends that told me nobody reads the paper anymore. You got to do a podcast, So I didn't even know what podcast was at that time. I thought that was something else in the outdoors or something to do with farming, So we started recording a podcast, myself along with one of my cousins in October of 2021. And it was the Pinstripes the Camo podcast. And a lot of people asked us through the years, well, Pinstripes, did you guys do some prison time? And then we had other people that, that said, well, is that, you guys New York Yankees fans? Well, I grew up a Red Sox fan. So eventually we were like, we got to change the title of this. So we changed the title of the podcast to the Southern Drawl Podcast. And that's kind of where we're at now.
So you're a fisherman.
I don't want to say I'm a fisherman. How about we just say I like to fish?
I get that because that's kind of how I am. Now, when you fish, do you fish like brim and catfish and bass, or do you go on trips to catch maybe some more exotic things from time to time, or how do you go about scratching that fishing itch?
I dabble in a little bit of all of it when I can. I used to, growing up, I loved bass fishing. We had a pond in our backyard. A lot of people don't know this. When I was little, we lived outside of Laurel in Myrick, and we had a little pond in the backyard, and I'd fish for bass every day back there. As I got older, I enjoyed going on the river more and running trot lines and hand grabbing and things like that.
Oh, boy.
But if I can do some saltwater fishing, if the opportunity presents itself, I'll certainly go.
Yeah.
I've been out of Venice a couple of times on some tuna trips and, some snapper trips. I just most recently, myself and a friend, a guy I went to high school with at Laurel, Ben Beasley, he was a kicker at Laurel and went on to kick at Liberty University. We got a wild hair and decided we were going to kayak out to Deer Island and get some flounder.
Boy.
So we did that about a week ago, and neither of us came home maimed or injured in any way, so we considered it a success.
I see guys in these kayaks fishing out in big water. Man, you guys are nuts. I wouldn't do that for anything.
Well, and I've seen some of those videos too, guys. They're hooking onto a mackerel or something like that out in the water, and then next thing you know, they got a shark following around in a kayak. And that's not me. I don't have any desire to do that whatsoever. But pulling the kayak up on the bank and getting out and gigging flounder is not too bad.
I got you.
Okay, well, listen. Is there a famous fisherman that you, like Bill Dance used to come on with all the tips? When you were a little kid, did you follow those shows, or did you ever have a meeting with someone like Paul Elias?
Well, okay, so I always watched Bill Dance on Saturday mornings when I was growing up. He was always on TV. And there was another TV show that came on that I always loved because it was just more exotic to me. It was called Walker's Cay Chronicles.
Oh, man, I love that show.
Wasn't it fantastic? Those guys that go out and they're fly fishing for tarpon and things like that down in the Keys.
Yeah.
And it always made me just really crave going and fishing salt water. Just by the way that show went, I thought it was a great show. And then growing up, I had some opportunities to actually fish with Paul Elias a couple of times. His stepson was one of my roommates in college for a little while, so got to know them really well and got to go fishing with Paul. And the thing about fishing with Paul that I learned was don't go do it because it would just make you mad. He's so much better than you'll be.
Isn't that amazing?
We would fish. I can remember one time I went out to the Lake Edens with them at their place up there, and obviously Paul knows that lake like the back of his hand, but we were fishing the exact same bait on the exact same rod and reel. And I'd throw my lure in the water, and I'd work it and reel it in and wouldn't catch anything. He'd look at me and say, "You didn't catch a fish with that right there?" And he'd take his and throw it in the same spot and pull, a 4 or 5 pounder out of there. And I figured out real quick that, one, I didn't want to fish with Paul anymore, and two, any aspirations that I had for being a professional fisherman were dying that day. So.
Hey, let me ask you this. Did you ever follow up on that Walker's Cay thing and head down to, maybe down there to the Keys and try to catch one of those tarpon or anything? You ever tried that?
I've never had the opportunity to go. I've got some friends in South Florida that have been down there and done it, and then I've got a friend in Port St. Lucie that always wants me to come down and go spearfishing with him, but I haven't quite warmed up to that yet, because the first question he asked me was if I'm afraid of sharks, and which I thought was a stupid question. He's not afraid of sharks. But he said, you get in the water and there's sharks everywhere. So I hadn't quite worked up the courage yet to get in the water with him and shoot a fish with a spear gun. But, I'd love to go down to the Keys on a fishing trip one day, and it's still something that, that I think about from time to time, and I see other people doing it, and I'm obviously envious of them. But, it goes back to that deal where you got to make a living before you can live.
Yeah.
And baseball season, it's unforgiving with time. So as long as I'm still coaching baseball, I'm going to have to keep watching people on TV most likely.
What's the biggest fish that you've caught, say the biggest catfish for our listeners?
I caught a yellow cat or a tabby cat, and people call them different, or a flathead, hand grabbing a couple of years ago on a local river. I guess I can say the river. I caught it on the Bowie River. It weighed 47 pounds.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And caught it out of a hole that my uncle found when I was a kid, and we've been fishing that particular hole for about 20 years, and usually it'll have 2 fish in it if you're lucky. And but went out. I took my dad one day, and he had never really been with me to do that before, which he thought I was stupid to put my hands in a hole where you can't see. But 47 pounds, and I had my two older girls with me on that trip, so that was a pretty cool experience.
I tried that one time up in at Ross Barnett, and it was just a couple of years ago. I'm getting along on in age, and I tell you what, I'm a little too old for that. I couldn't quite pull it off. I ran out of air.
It's a young man's game. And I'm getting a little older to where I value having my hands and fingers a little more than I did years ago. So I don't do it near as much as I used to. And I'm a little bit more careful now than I used to be.
Well, listen, just turning to hunting for a little bit. Tell us about your contest that you had between USM and William Carey. I don't know if it was a baseball, if it was just the coaches or coaches and players, but just tell us how you came up with that.
Well, we did a coach and player deal. Now, Coach Scott Berry at USM actually started this without realizing he started it. When they had the first velvet hunting season a couple of years ago in Mississippi, I didn't go. It was hot and mosquitoes were everywhere, and I said, you know what, I'm not that mad at them in September. So I went fishing that day instead. Well, Coach Berry went hunting, and he killed a really nice velvet buck. And I think the next week, he and a friend of mine were playing together in a golf tournament, and somehow or another hunting came up, and I didn't even go on a trip that weekend. And Coach Berry made a video where he called me out for not hunting, and he called me soft basically, and said I had to be present to win, and typical coach speech, right? So I said, well, I'll tell you what. I called him up the next day, and I said, hey, I saw your video. How about you kind of put your money where your mouth is? Let's have a competition. So we had a friendly competition that year. We both picked 8 players each, and then he led their team and I led ours. Kind of a play on baseball, having 9 guys on the field, and we just turned the guys loose and said, each person can count three bucks, and we'll just total up the score at the end of the year and see who wins. So, and we've done that the last 2 years, and it's been a lot of fun. Coach Ostrander, when he took over at Southern after Coach Berry retired, he was all in to do it. So it's been a lot of fun for our guys. It gives them a way to compete in the fall outside of baseball, and we don't get to play Southern anymore with the RPI stuff the way it is now. So this gives us an opportunity to compete against each other and some friendly outdoor competition.
Good stuff.
Well, listen, I know that Carey has played Southern in basketball, but I assume those are scrimmage games. Is there any ways y'all could scrimmage Southern Miss in baseball in the fall?
We did scrimmage them several years back in the fall, and that was nice. It was nice to get out of just playing inter-squad games where you're playing against yourself all the time. The NAIA changed some eligibility stuff, and it takes a little more time to get people cleared. So that kind of put the kibosh to that a few years ago, because we went over there one year, and I think we went with 7 starters that hadn't cleared eligibility yet, and we got absolutely pumped. And that's not good for anybody. It didn't do Southern any good. It certainly didn't do us any good. And I think it's just a situation where it's just harder to do now due to those eligibility requirements.
Yeah. Well, I just know when I was going to school down there that they used to play regular season games, and Carey was pretty good at the time. They had a guy from Laurel named Thurl Myers, if you ever heard of him, Ben. And old Thurl could hit the ball a long, long way. And of course, I was there the night that they played at Greater Hattiesburg Park there at Camper Park, I guess. One night game, I went out there and watched him. Ray Guy was pitching for Southern, and he no-hit Carey. So that was. So there was.
Coach Hofford still tells stories about Ray Guy. Everybody talks about Ray Guy as a football player and what he was able to accomplish in his career in the NFL, and probably, he's probably still the greatest punter of all time. But Coach Hofford said he's one of the greatest baseball players he ever saw.
Yeah, he had a fastball at that time that was probably I don't know how fast it was. I don't even know if they had pitching. guns back in those days where you could register how fast it was, but I just knew that he was at a different level of throwing. It was like he was throwing BBs and the other guys were throwing, beach balls, It was just that much of a difference. But I saw him play intramural basketball. And, of course, now, he was a little ball hog, God bless his soul, but he could score now.
Athletes, man.
And he was pretty physical under the gold, And, he was a great athlete.
We talk about, mentioned Coach Halford here, and obviously he's been around these parts of William Carey for a long time, since the early 70s. And the two of the names that I always hear him talk about through the years was number one, Ray Guy, and how good he was at baseball. And the other one was Rod Gilbert from Laurel.
Yeah.
Big time.
He talked about those two guys, and they were the two best players that he saw, through that time.
Well, it's, I don't know how known a fact it is, but, we actually had Rod on the show. But there's another player that came out at the same time from Laurel that Rodney did. And I think he might have been one of the highest draft choices ever in the area, but he was a black player that never played high school baseball because schools weren't integrated at that time. And his first name was Ted, last name was Nicholson. And Squeaky Parker, the old scout, he told me one time they were working out, Rod and this Ted Nicholson, and he said Ted Nicholson put one over that road in left field that we used to drive to go to the Boots Smith Fields, if you remember that.
Yeah, over at Wooten Legion Field. Yeah,
and he said you could still. It wasn't a line drive. It was one of those balls that were, a moonshot. It just kept going and going and going. The White Sox drafted him, and I can't remember. And I think he was the highest until this Connor Griffith out of high school. Anyway, the story on him was that, back in the 70s there was a lot going on, in the culture of the youth and everything. And I think he traveled a bad road and just didn't make it, And so unfortunately he got into some bad habits that he could never come. And being probably an 18-year-old kid from at that time, and you go to Idaho to play baseball, it's probably a big difference.
There's no doubt, and I've had the opportunity to, with our team to play in Idaho 3 years out of the last 7 years. That's where the NAIA World Series is at, and it's a beautiful place. We go to Lewiston, Idaho for the World Series, but it's a different place. It's beautiful, but the people are different, which they're good people up there, and we've always enjoyed our time up there. But it's a different world than Mississippi for sure.
Amen.
Listen, guys, I hate to do it. I warned you about this in our pregame talk here, Ben. We're going to run out of time, and that's where we are. Listen, we really appreciate you being with us tonight. It's been a real treat. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed it.
We'll ask you to hold on just a minute. Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors and be back with tonight's final segment right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everybody. And you too, Dale. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, being a great guest, wasn't he?
Man, that's a guy right there,
boy. You were getting excited over
I'm
here.
telling you, he's talking. Now, listen. I've already sent him pictures and everything else, fishing, and we talking sturgeon. We may go fishing.
There you go.
He may have got me a new fishing buddy.
You may go to Idaho.
I might. I've been a couple times. I've stayed in Lewiston. The town he was taking about, that's what got me. That's where we stayed when we went and fished. We went out. I've always been a dream of mine to catch one of those sturgeon. And we went out there and went to Hell's Canyon. And we flew into Spokane, and then we went to Lewiston, Idaho, and stayed there and then fished the Snake River in Hell's Canyon. And
I've heard of that Snake River.
Oh, man. It's something else. And, bighorn sheep all over you can drive right up to them in the boat, man. They don't run. It's just beautiful. But anyway, I'm excited, And this guy here, man, he's He was a treat, Dale. There's just no end. I mean, you get fishermen, you get Hall of Fame baseball players, Hall of Fame football players, Heisman Trophy winners. Man, you can do it all.
Oh, you talking about?
I'm talking about you, Dale McKee.
Oh, I don't know about
Real
that.
go-getter.
No, I've been very lucky. Well, we're gonna start getting on college football in the next couple of weeks.
So we're going to have some fun on this college football this year. You hear me? It's going to be a lot of fun. And we've had fun today, but it's kind of winding down. I want to remind everybody you can follow us on Facebook at the Brouhaha, and all of our shows are archived on our YouTube channel, the Brouhaha. So check us out and be again with us next week. But for now, I believe it's about time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.